Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. The seven realities. Number one, the only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. Number two, the only real love is the love for this infinity, which is God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, which is God. Number three, the only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. Number four, the only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. Number five, the only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred. To try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. Number six, the only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. Number seven, the only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. So, with that, let's get started reading part 3. Jai Baba to all. 1 second, I just need 1 second to. Apologies. Yeah. So, we are reading Reincarnation and Karma. We are in part 3, and for Soma especially, and for everybody else, all the videos are up to date. So I posted them last weekend. Apologies for the delay, and I'll try to keep up week on week. So
Thank you.
is part three is the existence and the memory of past lives. Just so that we do a recap, probably we will just go through what we read in part two. Part two is it covers the hell and heaven state. We understood the finer nuances, the timing, and what is experienced in the hell and heaven state. From there, we are going now to part three, which is on memory of past lives. Yeah, let's get started. First subtitle is Gateways of Birth and Death. Those who have immediate access to the supersensible truths concerning the life of the soul and its reincarnation know, through their unclouded perception, that so called birth is only an incarnation of the individualized soul in the gross sphere. The unbroken continuity of the life of the reincarnating soul is punctuated by birth and death, both of which are comparable to gateways in the stream of life as it advances from one type of existence to another. Both are equally necessary in the greater life of the soul, and the interval between death and birth is as necessary as the interval between birth and death. Demands of intuition.
Jai Baba, I
Yeah.
think in this particular paragraph that you read, there is, for me, the line which said the so-called birth is only an incarnation of the individualized soul in the gross sphere. It is almost like a definition about birth. Okay. And the second thing is, one of the definitions of birth, right? Only an incarnation of the individual soul self consciousness. That is how I interpret it. Because the soul does not go through anything, it is the consciousness. So we have to always keep that in mind, that the individual soul self consciousness. I use the word self because of the ego personality self, or the individualized self, which is limited here. The second thing is the last line you read, both are equally necessary in the greater life of the soul, which is the soul's consciousness, and the interval between death and birth, which we know is the astral experience, using the astral body in the astral world to replay the experience that the soul's consciousness undergoes in the gross body, that is before death. So the interval between death and birth is as necessary as the interval between birth and death. It's a very powerful statement here that, we have been conditioned to think of, okay, there is only one birth, one death, and then we don't know what happens after death, of course. But here it is clearly indicating to us, after reading the chapter on heaven and hell, because that is about the astral experience, the astral body experience after death. So that is why this sentence is very powerful, that the necessary as the interval between birth and death. Jai Baba.
Both,
One point, this word
sure, go ahead.
individualized soul. So the first time we heard of it as the individualized soul in the state to be after realization. So here it's once again coming up. So the incarnation of the individualized soul in the gross sphere. So starting with Vim itself, it is individualized and it goes through all the process and remains as individualized soul in state to be also. So this concept is a bit of a thing to understand and then imbibe. Any highlights on that?
Yes.
Jai Baba.
I believe you mean Doc Mama state 2A.
Not 2A, from 2A we start off and then after realization also, there is no question of dissolving with the oversoul or merging with the oversoul. Maybe that term merging may be okay to an extent, but still we remain as individualized, realized soul.
Yes, correct. So what you're saying is from state 2A, where the individualized soul after the whim, we have two states, 2A and 2B.
Yes.
So 2B is the eternal avataric infinite consciousness, and 2A is the individual.
How's the audio?
Kama, your audio is gone. It's still there. Kama, we lost you, so you got to repeat yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Okay. So what I'm saying is that the state 2A, which is where the drop souls, all of us drop souls, with limited individualized consciousness, going through evolution, reincarnation, involution, if we reach, let's say, Sachitananda state, and if you get liberated, or liberation, of course, there are many kinds of liberation: nirvana, nirvikalpa samadhi, sahaja samadhi, and so on. But as was saying that when you reach state 2C, the embodied soul, there you are an infinite knowledge power. Plus, when you go back to state 2B, as he referred to, you maintain that individuality, and that individuality is definitely infinite, indivisible, and experiences Sachitananda state. So the difference is that in the before realization, the soul's consciousness is not conscious of itself, that it is unlimited. It thinks it's limited, but after realization, that drop soul consciousness not only maintains its individuality, but that is not an ego personality, but it's more of a universal mind, universal body, and infinite energy, and so on. Okay, Baba.
Only problem with me is how do we actually relate this with clear Advaita. So when we remain as individualized souls, even after realization, can it be Advaita? That is my concern.
Yes, definitely. Advaita Vedanta is Advaita, that is not two, no two. Non-duality is about the self. So there is only the self, because in the self you can't talk about opposites, basically. And the self itself, the way I look at it, there are two aspects to it, right? One is the divine absolute vacuum state, which is the beyond God state. And the other state is the Satchitananda state, which is the Nirvikalpa Samadhi state. So, as mentioned in God Speaks, that state 2, which is Paramatma, Allah state, is what we know as beyond God state, Paramatma state. But to describe even the beyond God state, which is the divine absolute vacuum state, unless one experiences that state after nirvana, then only one can know what it is. So I think the Advaita Vedanta is another school of thought. Let's look at it from an operating system point of view, that Advaita Vedanta has been very, very strong and basically complements whatever Baba has talked about in God Speaks, from my point of view, because it's a huge topic to explain and describe, because there are many interpretations to that. Jai Baba.
Okay, Jai Baba.
You skirted it, right? So you also left it unanswered, but I have the same problem. So let's keep keep at it, and if you find any more information that helps understand this individualized soul retaining its individual status even after realization, if you find more references and more clarity, any one of us, let's share that. But at this stage, our strong conditioning of Advaita is the one that's coming in the way.
I have one insight, an analogy. Imagine us as babies. So the baby state is almost being unconscious initially, even of our gender. Okay. Then the baby goes through the 7 stages. Shakespeare, like I said, 7 sevens are 49, or 12 into 7, 84. Between 49 to 84, let's say an individual soul goes through birth, school, work, death, BSWD. Okay. So the child is not conscious of himself, who he is. But then if you go through the whole different stages and you reach that point where you're in the 6th or 7th stage of life, then you have become an adult, you have achieved both material and, let's say, spiritual freedom, like a perfect master. Then that individual soul, when it was a baby, was totally unconscious. I mean, even Baba's, if you look at Advent, the avatar himself is unconscious of himself till that is awakened by the perfect masters. And then he is incognito for a long time, and then publicly manifests himself, right? And then people who have the grace of the perfect master or the avatar get to know that, yes, this is a perfect master. So what I'm trying to say out here is that I think all of us as ordinary human beings also go through this process of going from unconscious divinity to conscious divinity in a very, very imperfect way, I would call it. Jai Baba.
Sure. Demands of intuition, the next subtitle, as is true of those who consider death to be the termination of individual existence, those who consider the birth of body to be its beginning are. Oops, you have to mute. You have to mute, Nomita. Nomita has to mute. Yeah. All right. I'll start again. As is true of those who consider death to be the termination of individual existence, those who consider the birth of body to be its beginning are also confronted with a conflict between their false assumptions and the claims of rationalized intuition. From the standpoint of individual justice, the uneven distribution of good and bad in relation to material happiness or prosperity seems seriously to impugn the rationality and justification of the entire scheme of the universe. To see the virtuous at times suffering deeply and the vicious possessing the amenities of pleasure creates insurmountable difficulties for anyone who prefers to look upon life as being meant to fulfill an eternal and divine purpose. Tendency to accept deeper explanations. Unless there is some deeper explanation forthcoming, the human mind is riddled with agonizing perplexities that tend to embitter a person's general outlook on life and foster a callous cynicism. This, in many ways, is even worse than the deepest personal sorrow that death may cause. But in spite of all appearances to the contrary, the human mind has in it an inborn tendency to try to restore to itself a deep and unshakable faith in the intrinsic sanity and value of life. Except where artificial resistances are created, it finds acceptable those explanations that are in conformity with this deeper law of the spirit.
Jai Baba, I think these two paragraphs are very insightful. One, as last time I remember when Sunil was asking about intuition, I think this is an example of how I think all of us have gone through this probably, at least I'll speak for myself. We all understand that there's a lot of suffering, children having physical, at a very early age, they might get some disease which is incurable, lose their beloved, their children at a very young age. And then all the atrocities that happened during World War I, World War II, and what is happening now in Afghanistan and so on and so forth. So we see this repetition of physical suffering, especially, which leads to mental suffering. And there is always this question from atheists and agnostics, about, is there a God? Like, now, for me, I think the solution was very simple. When you look at God as an object of love, then you're going to lead to failure. But once you understand that God is not an object, but a subject that is yourself, then things become very clear. Because, for example, we have gone through from animal instinct as a caveman to an analytical reasoning mind in the Industrial Revolution. Now, this is the age of the Aquarius age, they say. But we are seeing a lot of turmoil going on based on the new humanity, which we have read, and the other chapters. And so, interestingly, now intuition is going to play a very, very big role. And the other thing that the second paragraph that you read, tendency to accept deeper explanations. But in spite of all appearances to the contrary, the human mind has in it an inborn tendency to try to restore itself a deep and unshakable faith in the intrinsic sanity and value of life. Except where artificial resistances are created, it finds acceptable those explanations that are in conformity with the deeper law of the spirit. Now, this is something you don't read quite often. The law of the spirit. It comes very rare. And this is where, for me, I have understood that there is the laws of matter and the laws of the spirit. They are like two sides of the same coin. Just understanding the laws of matter right now with quantum physics and all is not enough. That is why physicists and people are struggling to understand what is the purpose of life. But I think this particular line is very clear that once you understand the deeper laws of the spirit, then you can achieve that kind of harmony and balance or adjustment between mind and heart. Because you need to use the mind for practical material life. There is no doubt about it. But that is just a scaffolding. We know that. So I'll stop here. Jai Baba.
Thank you. I'll continue. Effect. Yeah, go ahead.
The term rationalized intuition, what do we mean by that? I am unable to understand that. What I feel is intuition is a sort of a thing which comes up on its own, and that explains things to us. But to rationalize that intuition, what do we mean by that?
One way of interpreting is the intuitive wisdom we talked about, which means theory and practice. See, sometimes what happens, you have a certain intuition and you go by it and execute it, and you learn from that experience. Another way I look at it is the balancing of mind and heart. Okay, heart is about intuition, mind is about analytical reasoning mind, which is rationalization or logical thinking or processing. So we know that in the material aspects of life, or even in the spiritual aspects, Baba talks about that mind and heart have to balance each other. And I think you can also look at it from the Vivek and Vairagya point of view, rationalized intuition. So it's a very difficult term to describe, but that is how I look at it. Yeah, Baba.
Thank you.
So let's continue. Effect of getting a new brain. Those who have direct access to the truth of reincarnation are even fewer than those who have direct access to the truth of the immortality of the individual soul. The memories of all past lives are stored and preserved in the mental body of the individual soul, but they are not accessible to the consciousness of ordinary persons because a veil is drawn over them. When the soul changes its physical body, it gets a new brain, and its normal waking consciousness functions in close association with the brain processes. Under ordinary circumstances, only the memories of the present life can appear in consciousness because the new brain acts as a hindrance to the release of the memories of those experiences that had been gathered through the medium of other brains in past lives. Memory of past lives. In rare cases, in spite of the resistance offered by the brain, some memories of past lives leak into the present life in the form of dreams that are completely unexplainable in terms of the present life. An individual may see persons in his dream whom he has never seen in his present life. It often happens that those who appeared in the dreams were persons whom he had met in his past lives. But of course, such dreams, when they are of the ordinary type, cannot be treated as a memory of past lives. They merely indicate that the imagination at work in the dreams was influenced by information taken from past lives. The real memory of past lives is clear, steady, and sure, like the memory of the present life. When it comes to an individual, he no longer has any doubt about his having existed in several previous lives, along with many other individuals. Just as he cannot doubt his own past lives in the present incarnation, he cannot doubt his life in the past incarnations. Release of memory of past lives. The number of persons who can remember their past lives is very small compared with the vast majority who are so completely bound to the gross sphere of existence that they do not even suspect supersensible realities. The release of such memories is severely conditioned by the limitations of the brain as long as consciousness is entangled with the physical body and its brain processes. When consciousness is emancipated from the limitations imposed by the brain, it can recover and re-establish the memories of past lives, which are all stored in the mental body. This involves a degree of detachment and understanding that only the spiritually advanced can have. The memory of past lives can come with full clarity and certainty even to those who are still crossing the inner planes of consciousness but have not yet become spiritually perfect. Loss of memory of past lives does not affect progress. The memory of past lives does not come back to a person except in abnormal and rare cases unless he is sufficiently advanced from the spiritual point of view. This provision made by the laws of life secures unhampered spiritual evolution of the individualized soul. At first view, it might seem that the loss of memory of previous lives is a total loss, but this is far from being so. For most purposes, knowledge about past lives is not at all necessary for the guidance of the onward course of spiritual evolution. Spiritual evolution consists in guiding life in the light of the highest values perceived through intuition and not in allowing it to be determined by the past. In many cases, even the memory of the present life acts as an obstacle for certain adjustments demanded by the spiritual requirements of the changing situations of life. The problem of emancipation may, in a sense, be said to be a problem of securing freedom from the past, which, in the case of those who are bound to the wheel of birth and death, inexorably shapes the present life. Shielding from complications. Life would be infinitely more complicated if one who is not spiritually advanced were burdened by the conscious memory of numberless past lives. He would be dazed and unsettled by the diversity of settings in which persons would appear to him in the light of his memory. He is not called upon to face such confusion, however, because he is shielded from the resurrection of the memory of past lives. Things and persons come to him in a limited and definite context and setting, with the result that he finds it easy to determine his actions and responses in the light of what he knows from the present life. This does not mean that his actions and responses are entirely determined by what he knows from his present life. All that has happened in past lives also has its own unconscious but effective share in determining his actions and responses. In spite of the actual influence of past lives, the fact remains that since he is shielded from the resurrection of conscious memory, his consciousness is not subject to the confusion that would result if the conscious memory of past lives were among the data he had to consider for the purpose of determining his actions and responses.
Jay Baba,
condition. Yeah.
I think this last few paragraphs that you read, um, it's all about sanskaras. That this does not mean that his actions and responses are entirely determined by what he knows from his present life. All that has happened in past lives also has its own unconscious but effective share in determining his actions and responses. I think this word actions and responses is very important here in the context of our daily action. Most of the time, we are unconscious, we are on auto mode because of sanskaras. That is why we talk about spending sanskaras, unintelligent action, or unwinding sanskaras, which is intelligent action. That is reaction, which is unintelligent action, or responding, by intelligent action. I mean, just semantics here. But also that the interesting fact is all the actions and responses of past lives are stored in the memory, which is the mental body, which we know is the repository of sanskaras. Because sanskaras we know is the imprints or impressions created by our action of thoughts, words, and deeds. So here we know, and there is one part where you read, when the soul changes its physical body, it gets a new brain, and its normal waking consciousness functions in close association with the brain processes. Under ordinary circumstances, only the memories of the present life can appear in consciousness because the new brain acts as a hindrance to the release of the memories of those experiences that had been gathered through the medium of other brains in past lives. It's a very interesting explanation, much more scientific. Why don't we? There are two aspects to it. Why don't we recall past lives? One is that you have a new brain when you are reborn, but also, according to the laws of life, which was talked about, the memory of past lives does not come back to a person except in abnormal and rare cases unless he is sufficiently advanced from the spiritual point of view. This provision made by the laws of life, which I call as material laws and spiritual laws, secures unhampered spiritual evolution of the individualized soul. So we all understand that even handling our current life with our current sanskaras in this life itself is a very, very difficult challenge. Now imagine an ordinary human being is able to recollect his past lives, past memories, then you're going to get more confused because we are already confused here with this current state of mind. So it is very interesting to see how the divine theme, how nature has designed the human being about brain, about mental body, about sanskaras, and why we are not able to recollect past lives. But it also says that when you are in the involution planes between first and sixth, definitely you will start recalling your past lives. And the reason is because you are now, you are now trained to be able to handle that. Suppose you have done some horrifying things in your past lives, and instead of letting it influence you and making you feel bad, you can be very detached. You using Vivek and Vairagya and understand why that happened in your past life and why are you going through certain kinds of experiences in this life. So a lot of things we are not able to explain through rationalization because many of these things are based on past sanskaras. So this is a great explanation in all the different paragraphs about how the action and responses that we have is something that is both conscious and unconscious. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I'm chuckling to myself as I was reading the previous paragraphs. I think I have mentioned in earlier sessions that I've uh, uh, done an experiment to understand or go to past life memories. And if what I have been through is true, and if I was able to remember it all the time, I would have been in trouble. Because the people that I'm supposed to be related to in different ways in this birth would have come in the way of everything that I did. So I was just chuckling to myself, which is nature's way of ensuring that you are a little more saner than crazy. So that's interesting.
To
In
add to, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, only I would like to bring in this the Hindu concept of say prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, and agami karma. So prarabdha sanskara is what we are going through now. Sanchita sanskaras are hidden for safety's sake, and it will be unveiled when we get a new brain. Part of it, not all. Okay. And then agami is what we create ourselves in this life itself and add on to the say the sanskaras which are we are trying to spend. We are also adding to the account. So these two terms which are used, these three terms used in the uh, Hindu philosophy is very clear here with all these explanations. I feel they give a lot of insight using those terms also. Hey, Baba. So,
Thanks for that,
karma
but I'm
we
a
can
bit
replace.
confused between samskara. Yeah,
Huh?
agreed. Yes, karma you can
You
replace
just
with
replace
samskara.
the word karma with sanskara.
Sanskara, perfect. Now, I had one question. I didn't understand sanchita with agami. So
Ah,
prarabdha is what you bring in when you're born in this birth. I'm
yes,
talking Vedantic for everybody's context reference. So so in the Vedantic way, I think prarabdha is what you bring in when you're born, right?
yes.
That is the samskaras of the past. What is sanchita in that context? I thought that is what
Sanchita
you
is what
add.
is
Sanchita is
explained here.
aggregation.
Aggregate of all the sanskaras of the whole of evolution and reincarnation. So,
But that's
but only
prarabdha as
that
well.
one part we are experiencing with the new brain in this birth. That is
Ah,
agami. That is the prarabdha.
okay, got it.
And
So if you look at it in mathematical terms, I have the superset, which is prarabdha. Then I take a subset, which is specific to this birth, with
that is
and
prarabdha.
that's
That is
yes,
prarabdha.
that's prarabdha. Sanchita is the superset. Sorry,
Yes.
prarabdha is the subset, which is specific to this birth. And
Yes.
within this birth, what I create, which is the
Ah,
winding and new sanskaras, is the agami. Cool. Very good.
agami.
Thank
Yes.
Prarabdha is what we call destiny, right?
The destiny means you cannot escape the sanskaras which you have brought into this life. So you have to
Right.
spend that. You have how you spend is left to you, but that is why it is taken as destiny because you can't change that. You can live with that, spend it in an intelligent way, and then try to get rid of that. Otherwise,
Right.
you can't escape it. That's why it is referred to as destiny, sort of.
So Prarabdha is destiny.
Ah,
Yeah, Baba.
Actually, prarabdha, the way I would interpret is prarabdha karma or sanskaras. Prarabdha, prarabdha karma. Okay. So if you look into the technical definition, prarabdha means past and karma is actions. So you can look at action of thoughts, words, and deeds, which is creating weak, strong, and powerful impressions, which are sanskaras. So prarabdha karma is prarabdha sanskaras, which is the net, what Karthik was talking about, is the total cumulative baggage of sanskaras that we have accumulated, both debit and credit, good karma plus
I'll
bad
stop
karma.
you. I'll stop you there, Kama. That's where I started my summary with the Vedantic expression. Prarabdha Baba uses here, and what you are saying is the meaning as Baba says it. But
Yes.
Mama got in the triune nature of
Sanchita.
samskaras, the three
Sanchita karma.
concepts of Sanchita, Agami, and Prarabdha. In that context, in the Vedantic way, I understood it and clarified for myself and everyone. But I know that that may be in contravention with what Baba said about Prarabdha earlier in discourses. What you said is what Baba said on Prarabdha.
Correct. Because
Yeah.
what we are doing is we can't do anything about the prarabdha karma, because the prarabdha karma is going to influence our action of thoughts, words, and deeds in the waking state as a human being in our daily life. The question here is, you have a choice. Are you going to use intelligent action, or you are going to use unintelligent action? So that is where the unwinding sanskaras comes and the spending of sanskaras comes. So the question here is that how dominant that particular sanskara is, and the willpower that you have, the free will or power of choice, or you can say Baba's grace, that, for example, as Baba said, when you have lustful thoughts, he told Krishna Nair, he said, repeat this, Satchitananda Paramananda Meher Baba Vijnana. One way of trying to divert your attention, because action is not just deeds. It starts with a thought, and then the thought becomes an emotion or subtle energy, desire, emotion, feeling, and then you are actually going to convert that into the action of deed. So you have three steps out here. So the thought is because of sanskara. The question is, if the sanskara is very dominant and you are addicted to that particular kind of action, you will do unintelligent action. But suppose you have the grace and you have that free will or power of choice and you have vivek and vairagya, then you will probably think about it and say, you know what, let me wait till tomorrow. There is a saying which I like: if you have a good thought, do it now. If you have a bad thought, do it tomorrow. Wait till tomorrow. Shiva.
Nice one. Reminds me of my mother. She used to say something like that. Yeah, nice one. Yeah. Let's continue. Conditions for release of memory. The resurrection of the memory of past lives can be faced without confusion or loss of balance only when the person has become desireless and has lost all feeling of mine and thine. Those whom he once looked upon as belonging to him might be seen in the present life belonging to someone else. And if he were to continue his attachments and supposed claims, he would create untold complications, misery, and confusion for himself and others. Possessiveness of all types has to be purged from the mind if the aspirant is to be spiritually prepared to withstand the disturbing influence of memories from past lives. Spiritual preparation. When an
I have a
individual
question.
is... Yeah, sure, Sunil, go ahead.
Yeah. So just now Kama mentioned that from the first plane onwards, the memory of past life is available to the aspirants. Is that correct, Kama? In the involution first plane onwards.
Well, I don't think that is a definition that I've read, but definitely once when you're in the planes of involution, then look, there are two aspects to it. We know that either you go veiled or you go unveiled, right?
Right.
So if you are going veiled, there is no question of past life memories coming to you, right? But
Right.
if one is going unveiled and going through, let's say, each plane, that I want to experience each plane, so probably some memories will start to come depending on the condition of that individual, how well that person is suited in terms of remembering those past lives and able to handle it. So I have not read anywhere whether it starts from the first plane or second plane, but definitely it happens during the involution planes. And I think some people also in the gross plane of existence do have dreams and dreams of past lives. So it becomes a little bit tricky that probably in the involution planes, one may say that, okay, this past life memory makes sense. Whereas if it probably happens to an ordinary individual, then he's not very sure about that. It's like a dream. So that is just my understanding.
Okay, Karthik, can we go back to release of memory on the previous page? There's a para.
Sure. Release. Yeah.
Yeah, lower part of it. Yeah, the memory of past lives can come with full clarity and certainty, even to those who are still crossing inner planes of consciousness, but have not yet become spiritually perfect. So this one says yes. So come on, just now you mentioned no reference, but there is a reference here as I read it, unless somebody can. So it seems like
Yes, no, you're perfectly right. See, I was just saying that your question was, does it start from the first plane? Okay.
right.
The sentence here, it clearly says memory of past lives can come with full clarity and certainty even to those who are still crossing the inner planes. It doesn't say which plane.
Okay.
That's my point. I definitely said that there are two aspects to it. If you're going unveiled, yes,
Right.
based on this sentence, you will be able to have full clarity and certainty, but it doesn't say which plane. So probably
Which plane,
it
yeah.
will start seeping in slowly, whatever is required for that particular plane. That is how I look at it.
Jai
I'm
Baba.
trying to. Yeah, go ahead.
There seems to be a sort of a necessity to go through these memories of all the past lives. That is the only way to unwind, no? Otherwise,
No, no, no,
you
no,
are
no,
still.
no, no,
No,
no.
no. Your mental body has it anyway. When in fully conscious state, as in the human form, you don't need it. But when you're
I
in
am not
between,
speaking in the gross
okay, okay,
sphere itself.
okay.
In the
Yeah, your
planes,
mental body has it.
when the spiritual path, when you are ascending in the planes from 1 to 6, so there is supposed to be a total unwinding, no? To become zero of all your sanskaras, you have to go through all this unwinding of all your sanskaras totally stored up. So that technically means that you need to go through all that. How you go through is the way left to each individual soul. But this has to happen to all the souls before realization.
Doc Mama, let
Isn't
me
it
clarify
logic?
that. No, Doc Mama, there is one line here which is very clear on page 315. In many cases, even the memory of the present life acts as an obstacle for certain adjustments demanded by the spiritual requirements of the changing situations of life. Okay. So the important thing out here to remember is, from a psychiatrist point of view, if you have read Dr. Weiss, when people have certain phobias or certain psychiatric problems, physical or mental, then past life regression helps. Definitely. These are specialized cases. But when you're going through the spiritual evolution, when you're going through emancipation, it is not necessary to have the memory of past lives all the time to unwind sanskaras. Because unwinding sanskaras is about acting in the present moment, what kind of action you want to do based on that contextual aspect. So there is no need to have the memories of past lives for everything. Yes, for certain circumstances, when we are going through a block, a mental block and an obstacle, for example, I have a mental block of driving. Okay. I have a certain mental block about swimming in water. So I know that there is some past life aspect which is preventing me from doing that, even kind of vertigo, heights. So, yes, on special circumstances, these things help based on past life regression. But in a general aspect of emancipation of the individual consciousness, there is no need. Okay, Baba.
Okay, I think Mama's question is more when you're not in the human form, and the fact that, hey, how do I solve it if I don't know what it is, right? I think that's where he's coming from. We say, hey, what is my total superset? If I don't know my superset, how do I deal with it? But I think that much is a given, right? Your mental body has all of it, and you deal with it. You purposely purge that and reset the memory using the brain processes or the physical brain instantiation in the new birth, in the birth in each reincarnation, is what I would infer. I don't know if I'm making sense.
But to answer your question, I think that evaluation happens after death. You have all the
After
time
death,
in
yes.
the world. Yes.
Yes.
So
Between
right now we don't have the
death and
time,
birth.
boss. We don't have time to even finish our present work. Who the hell can sit down and look at past life sanskaras? You don't have the time.
No, that's to be fair to Mama, that's what he started this question with. He was only talking about the point between death and the next one.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there is no doubt about it that unless you understand your sanskaras, which is what the heaven and hell state is. And I think later on during that, before you take the next birth, you're also going to evaluate all your past sanskaras in different lifetimes with the guidance of angel spirits and the perfect master or whatever you may call it. Yeah, Baba.
Jay Baba, Karthik, can I?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Can I
go ahead.
One of my experiences, it is directly or indirectly related to what we are discussing. So I went into my past life regression once and had a flash. And that flash was a sort of a photograph. It came like a flash or a fire. And it was a photograph of an engraving. And that engraving had 100 small engravings. And it came out that it was the engraving of Lord Mahavira. And I thought that this is just something which is to be just not very clear, very vague. Then I visited a similar temple in Indore, which has the same plaque, the same image. So I was intrigued by that. So I asked the priest there. We have our Jain's priest. So I asked him. So he confirmed that what I saw in the flash and what I saw in reality relates to my past life. So this sharing this with the group, and this is a real incident in my life. I hope this somehow answers some of the questions that the memory of past lives can come with full clarity and certainty. I'm assuming I'm in the gross plane. Don't think I'm in any other plane, but still in the gross plane also you can get some memories of past lives. But in my case, it was a religious or a memory related to a temple. Jeva.
So that's if you do the regression, which is not a natural thing, right?
Yeah. So this regression was done as a part of a workshop, but so I mean, yeah.
I've not done regression, so I'm maybe not intending to do as well.
Yeah, don't bother.
Because if you look at the conditions for release of memory, what we were reading just now, Karthik, go back to the para.
Sure.
316. And this is what Kama said just now. It's not necessary.
No, it's not necessary. I'm just sharing.
And in fact, it says, go up a little bit up, Karthik. It says the resurrection of memory of past lives can be faced without confusion or loss of balance only when a person has become desireless. In other words, if you have desires, you will face confusion or loss of balance. So if you are desireless and have lost the feeling of mine and thine, then it's fine. Those whom he once looked upon as belonging to him might be seen in the present life belonging to someone else. And if he were to continue his attachments and supposed claims, he would create untold complications, misery, and confusion for himself and others. So regression maybe as a medicine for certain complicated cases is okay. I'm not sure. But for normal people, I think regression may not be a good thing. Possessiveness of all types has to be purged from the mind if the aspirant is to be spiritually prepared to withstand the disturbing influence of memories from past lives. So this kind of explains my thought why regression should not be done if you are leading a normal life.
Totally agree.
Whichever.
Baba, forgive me and Ashok. Fooling around.
I don't know about when the workshop happened, but this I'm just sharing it. Yes.
Right. I mean, before reading God Speaks and Discourses, we've done so many things which maybe we will not do. That's the learning from here. So, and every time we take away something, we try to put it in our mind and actions as much as we can. Yeah, that's the whole thing about reading this. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing out to me.
Uh,
Thanks.
Yeah, Jai
Jai
Baba,
Baba.
but one thing, sorry, I just wanted to finish is that I have noticed that if you have read Dr. Weiss' books, regression analysis actually helps in very special circumstances. Sometimes, if there is a block in the mind, if there is a psychological problem or physiological problem, definitely regression in very special circumstances helps. In a very general sense, memory of past lives is not important. Once you have the guidance of a perfect master, if we all believe in Meher Baba, then as he said, love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice to the seven realities, and so on. That's what matters. All these things are just semantics and creates unnecessary confusion and complication because then it's all about acceptance and so on. Jai Baba.
Quick comment before I let Soma speak. I agree with what you're saying for therapeutic purposes, but I have a counter to that. So you're trying to again do something unnaturally, right? So if I have fear of driving in this birth, I better live with that and sort it out. Why should I use therapy, which is in a sense unnatural, to get over that fear? Because my prarabdha in this birth is to deal with that fear and live with it, and hence I will use public transport. I will do whatever struggle which I have to do without having to drive. So so that's a debate whether we can use it for therapeutic purposes, but obviously that's a lesser evil than doing it for recreational or whatever purposes that me and Ashok did it for. I'm bragging Ashok unnecessarily.
Karthik, you're right, and I did it not as a therapy. It was done in a as a seminar or a program where I was totally unaware of any spiritual or karmic manifestations.
Oh, okay, no problem. We shall ask for pardon.
Yes, yes.
Soma, your turn.
Yeah, just a interesting observation. I'm told, and I hope I'm right, that all the teachers of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, the teachers, they compulsorily have to go through past life regression, and it can be done to a maximum of 7 times. So there must be some context to it.
Interesting.
If
I was not aware of
Sri
this.
Sri is a master or perfect master or Sadguru, which I don't know, I'm totally not aware, then under the guidance of such a teacher, maybe certain things are allowed. Baba has not explained all the exceptions here. Maybe if he's guiding them, then it might be good for them. We don't know.
I don't think they're doing it directly under the supervision of Sri Sri, but there are others who are, I think, getting it done for them. I've been trying to find out, but I haven't been able to do so.
I wouldn't comment on that, but somehow we don't know what is directly or indirectly. If he's really so powerful, like a Sadguru, if at all he is, I'm not sure, then he may not sit in the room and guide them. If he's told the teachers, he may be watching them. Like Baba used to say, I have my nazar on you. You can be anywhere on this planet. So
That's
we have
interesting.
no idea of that environment. So I wouldn't comment. Sorry. Jai Baba.
That's interesting. I just wanted to bring this point and have your views. Thank you so much, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Suma, but one thing interesting in your uh, discussion is that the number 7 comes up, and number 7 definitely has got some spiritual significance.
Yes.
Okay, Baba.
Jai Baba, to what Karthik was saying, I'm talking about very special circumstance. And why I'm saying regression has helped, because look at it from this point of view, that when you look at Dr. Weiss, okay, I've read a couple of his books and I've really looked at the case studies. He's somebody like Edgar Cayce. I don't know how many people know about this American clairvoyant, Cayce. Edgar Cayce, who lived in Oklahoma or Louisiana, one of those places. And in Virginia, he's got about 15,000 case studies of patients. You know, he would go in a trance, and he was somebody who was a very ardent Christian who used to read the Bible, go to church. And the church, of course, didn't believe in reincarnation, but he said that, yes, from my readings, I know reincarnation has been there for the first 500 years of Christianity. Reincarnation was something that was a belief system. But coming back to Dr. Weiss, you know, he's a typical American, totally scientific. And then by accident, you know, he started finding solutions for his patients. So, and these patients have been cured. So there are two ways of looking at it. One is, if you are under the grace of Baba, there is no need to do any of that thing and just surrender to it. So definitely I agree to that point of view as a number one choice. Number two choice for people who don't have the grace of a perfect master or avatar and don't know things like love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice, they need to use a scientific methodology which works. That was my point. Jai Baba.
Agreed. I mean, for horses for courses, for different strokes, different folks. But then those with the Baba fold, I think let's just stick to steering clear of such stuff. Yeah. Okay, I continue.
By
Spiritual.
the way,
Yeah.
let's welcome Raja into the group. Yes.
Yes, I
Join
wanted to mention that as well. Yeah. Hi, Raja. Jai Baba.
Hi, Jai
Good
Baba.
morning. Early good morning to you.
Jai Baba.
Morning.
Jai Baba Raja.
Jai Baba Ashok. I
Nice
was
to
away
see you.
for about 6 months, and
Jai
I'm
Baba.
very glad to join you back. Yeah, thank you.
We are glad as well. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
So we will continue on the subtitle Spiritual Preparation. When an individual is spiritually prepared, he is completely desireless and full of impersonal love. All entanglements of the personal ego have disappeared from his mind. He can look upon his old friends and enemies with the same equanimity. He is so lifted out of his limitations that he is the same to relations and non-relations from his past and present lives. He is free from the idea of any pressing claims and counterclaims on his part against others, or of others against himself, because he has realized the deeper truth of the unity of all life and the illusoriness of mundane happenings. Wise use of resurrected memory. It is only when a person is thus spiritually prepared that he is unaffected by the revived memory of past lives. Only then is it worthwhile for him to have access to it. For he can then have that cool and unerring judgment and pure incorruptible love that enable him to make right and wise use of the new knowledge gathered through the resurrected memory of past lives. This knowledge opens to him a great deal of information about his own incarnations and those of others connected with him in past lives. It not only enables him to advance further on the spiritual path by conscious karmic adjustments, but also to help others on the path by directing them in the light of their past lives. Advantages of recovered memory. The speed of spiritual evolution is faster after the natural recovery of the memory of past incarnations. Disentanglement from mundane things is facilitated by conscious knowledge of the history of the development of such entanglements. Spiritual evolution, which was mostly unconscious of the limiting past, now becomes conscious of it. The obstacles, as well as the facilities created by the past, are now within the reach of consciousness and therefore are capable of being intelligently and carefully handled. Inarticulate intuition is supplemented by rationalized data. Therefore, action has less possibility of error and becomes more potent in producing desirable results.
Karthik, this last time also marked it. Inarticulate intuition
Intuition
is
supplemented
by rationalized data. So I don't understand that. Clarity is not in my mind to understand this phraseology as such.
Mamaji, I was just now thinking when you pointed to rationalized intuition.
Intuition above.
I did a control F. There are more than 20 references to intuition in this book. And I think it's worth going through each one in free time. So I was looking at each one of them. There is a pattern and there's a reasoning or explanation on intuition. So I could make out something, but I did a very quick read just now. But I think we'll go back to your question, and Karthik, please take over.
Am I hearing that you're volunteering to talk about intuition tomorrow?
Okay, let me
Yes,
try
please.
something.
That'll be lovely.
Let me try.
Sunil, at least you
That'll
can,
be wonderful.
first thing is to make all the references, put them together so that we can see them together at one point.
Okay, I'll do that.
Something will emerge.
Interpretation, I'll leave it to Kama. So I will put everything together.
Okay, good.
Round of applause for Cyril. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue. Knowledge of past lives. The masters of wisdom, having become spiritually perfect, have no special interest in past incarnations, which are among the many unimportant facts of mundane existence. If they make any use of their knowledge of the past lives of a person, it is only to help him on toward the eternal truth. Their knowledge of the past places them in a special position to give an aspirant just the guidance he needs. The details of the aspirant's spiritual path are often determined by the incidents of the past, the manner in which he has sought the highest truth in his past lives, and the obstacles or facilities he has created for himself through his past doings. All these things, which are hidden from the aspirant, are open to the unclouded perception of the perfect master, who uses his knowledge in order to accelerate the spiritual progress of the seeker of truth. The master leads the aspirant from the place in which he has landed himself through the experimentation and search of several lives. In spiritual matters, as in mundane matters, greater and unerring knowledge means economy of energy and time. I think it just hit me now on to explain that marked out statement that you had, Mama. Inarticulate intuition refers to inexpressive and just factual intuition. Go do this. This is what you should be doing. It's just an example of intuition. If that is supplemented by rationalized data, so Kama gets an intuition saying, "Go start driving." Okay. Now he will still be very nervous because it's just inarticulate intuition without any support. if he had the support of rationalized data from other births, which maybe he had a miserable experience in a prior birth with driving, and that explains why he need not be worried about it in this life, and he can undo that. That's rationalized data. So rationalized data with inarticulate intuition can actually help you progress. That's my understanding.
It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. This is this paragraph. Okay. So we concluded the past lives, and we had, I think, one conversation with all our past life experiences. So that's good. How much time do we have? Yeah, we can read a couple of pages from the next. For the
last sentence, the spiritual matters as in mundane matter. Greater and unerring knowledge means economy of energy and time. This time is a big scale time, I think. Evolutionary part. Yeah, the involutionary part.
Correct.
Not our
capital T.
Our gross time.
Any questions? Any other thoughts before we continue reading to the next part? No? Okay. So, part 4. Tar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Part 4. Specific conditions of incarnation. The individualized soul has its beginning and source in the infinite, formless, sexless, and indivisible being of God, who is beyond all forms of duality or evolution. With the beginning of the individualized soul, there is the beginning of duality and evolution through the specific form of duality consisting in the distinction and attraction based upon sex makes its appearance at a later stage of evolution. Duality exists as soon as there is subject and object, a center of consciousness, however dim, and
We are not able to hear you properly.
Sex on the bodily attraction. Is there everybody? Is there?
We are unable to hear you.
Can somebody else also?
Yes.
Karthik, yes. This is
Yes.
voice is garbled.
It's breaking.
Okay. Okay, so let me just get a cable then. Give me a minute. Is it better now or?
That's
Now
better.
it's okay.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes, it's better.
Thank you. I just got off the Bluetooth. So, do you suggest I just read the para again? That'd be better?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll start again. The sex, a specific form of duality. The individualized soul has its beginning and source in the infinite, formless, sexless, and indivisible being of God, who is beyond all forms of duality or evolution. With the beginning of the individualized soul, there is the beginning of duality and evolution through the specific form of, though the specific form of duality consisting in the distinction and attraction based upon sex makes its appearance at a later stage of evolution. Duality exists as soon as there is subject and object, a center of consciousness, however dim, and its environment. Sex, on the other hand, is a specific kind of bodily attraction that presupposes differentiation of forms, a specific kind of entanglement of the psyche with the forms and specific expressions of life and energy. Sex in subhuman forms. In the mineral kingdom, there are no sexual distinctions. In the kingdom of plants and trees, the bodily differentiations of sex with specialized biological functions have come into existence. Plants and trees do not generate sexual consciousness, since the development of consciousness in plants and trees is rudimentary and its expressions are not influenced by these bodily differentiations. Contact between the male and female in plants and trees is, due to their being fixed in the ground, not direct but only indirect through the intermediate agency of winds, bees, and so forth. Therefore, from the standpoint of the evolution of forms, sexual differentiation may be said to have begun to emerge even at the level of plants and trees, but from the point of view of their own consciousness, they cannot be said to have any sexual distinctions because their consciousness of duality is not in any way colored by sex. In the evolution of sexual duality, plants and trees stand midway between minerals which have no sexual differentiation and birds and animals which have it in its complete form. Just before the soul incarnates in the first human form, it arrives at full consciousness and energy in its last animal form, which it then drops to take a human body. Reincarnation of the individualized soul through human forms is preceded by its successive incarnations in the subhuman forms. Psyche is modified by sex. In animals, sex not only expresses itself through the bodily differences and activities, but is a deep-rooted factor that affects us. Since humans inherit their bodies as well as consciousness from highly evolved animals like apes, humans also find themselves subject to sexual duality. In humans, sex is so completely developed that it is no longer a matter merely of the body. It substantially modifies the psyche, which seeks its expression through the body in accordance with whether the form is male or female. Male and female incarnations. After attaining the form, as a rule, there is no reversion to animal forms. Cases of retrogression to subhuman forms are special and rare exceptions. Once the soul has attained human status, the normal course is to go through countless reincarnations in the human form itself. The human form may sometimes be male and sometimes female, according to the sanskaras and the spiritual requirements of the soul. The female form has the special prerogative that even the Sadgurus and the Avatar have to be born through the female form. The male form has the prerogative that the majority of the Sadgurus appear in male form. Although women can become saints and masters, the Avatar always appears in male form. Specific incarnation determined by sanskaras. The advantages and handicaps of an incarnation are always determined by the specific sanskara individual soul has accumulated in the past. The needs involved in the further development of the soul are related to the nature of its accumulated sanskaras. Therefore, these accumulated sanskaras really determine whether the soul takes its incarnation on the earth in the east or in the west, in a male form or in a female form, in one cycle of existence or in another. The facilities afforded by a specific incarnation are dependent not only upon whether an incarnation is in the male form or female form, but also upon whether it takes place in one cycle of existence or another cycle of existence, and whether it matches the tenor of earthly life in the Eastern Hemisphere or in the Western Hemisphere.
What's the reference to the cycle of existence?
Good question.
And then cycle of existence, and then what is the is there any other reference for this Eastern Hemisphere and Western Hemisphere being so much differentiated by Baba? Any other reference?
I think East
So
and
what is the
West is
actual?
explained below, Mamaji. That's the next para. So he explains a bit more. I'm not sure if there's anywhere else, but cycles of existence is also the last para.
Yes.
So we might just finish up and then discuss.
Okay, so let's just continue a little more and see if we need to discuss. So I'll start with East and West. Generally speaking, today on the whole, the East has developed more along spiritual lines than material lines, with the result that the Eastern mind has a more spontaneous aspiration for God. The West, on the whole, has developed more along material lines than along spiritual lines, with the result that the Western mind has a more spontaneous urge toward intellectual and artistic things. And incarnation usually brings with it a greater tendency towards spiritual life than in the West. And incarnation
Your voice is
Karthik,
breaking.
usually
you're breaking
brings
off
with it
completely.
a great in the part. The soul
Karthik,
experience the
your
material.
voice is totally breaking.
Okay, I'll start again. Is it better now?
It is better when you ask us whether it is
Anybody?
better. It is always better.
So let me try. I don't know if it is my internet. Let me check that.
Somebody else can read and finish off. We just have 10 minutes or thereabouts.
It's my internet. Yeah. Can somebody read, please?
Okay, let me.
Yeah, you want to take it up, Sunil? I will just show the screen.
Yeah, sure.
East and West, please.
I'm not even seeing your screen, but okay, East and West. Yeah, let's start from here. Generally speaking, today, on the whole, the East has developed more spiritual lines than material lines, with the result that the Eastern mind has a more spontaneous aspiration for God. The West, on the whole, has developed more along material lines than along spiritual lines, with the result that the Western mind has a more spontaneous urge towards intellectual and artistic things. An incarnation in East usually brings with it a greater tendency towards spiritual life than in the West. And an incarnation in the West usually brings with it a greater tendency towards material life than one in the East. But the soul has to experience the material as well as the spiritual aspects of life before it is freed from the fetters of a divided life. Therefore, the same soul has to incarnate in the East as well as in the West. Change of sphere. If a soul has had many successive incarnations in the East and then takes an incarnation in the West, it carries with it the impressions of its lives in the East, and though living in the West, it leads a life essentially in conformity with the Eastern pattern. If a soul has had many successive incarnations in the West and then takes an incarnation in the East, it carries it with it the impressions of its lives in the West, and though living in the East, it leads a life that is in conformity with the Western pattern. Sometimes one may thus have, for example, a European soul in an Indian form or an Indian soul in the European form. It must be borne in mind that this distinction is only relative to past incarnations and sanskaras, and that the soul as such is beyond such distinctions. The facilities afforded by male and female incarnations are not rigidly invariable. They change according to cycles of existence, as well as whether the incarnation is in the East or in the West. In some ages, men are more active, energetic, and materialistic than women. In other ages, the reverse is true. In the past, the women of East were brave and intellectual. They considered no sacrifice too great for the happiness and well-being of their husbands, and their spiritual humility extended to looking upon the husband as God himself. Now, in the Eastern Hemisphere, the average man has a greater spiritual inclination than the average woman. Just as in the West, the average woman of today has a greater spiritual inclination than the average man. A man living in the East is different from a man living in the West, and a woman living in the East is different from a woman living in the West. The joke is that in comparison with the members of the opposite sex, the same soul shows varying degree of superiority, inferiority, or equality with regard to spiritual or material matters, depending upon the cycle of existence, the sex of its body, and the earthly sphere in which it takes an incarnation. Jai Baba.
So do we
I
now know
didn't
what?
still understand the cycles of existence in terms of time definition.
No, most probably cycles means birth and death and reappearance once again in new birth and going through life and death. That may be the reference to cycles.
So individual souls, cycle of existence of an individual soul or of the universe as a whole?
No, individual soul.
Individual soul. Okay, yeah, maybe. That makes sense.
I'm sure. I think. Am I audible now?
Yes, Karthik, we can hear you.
No, I'm not sure if it's individual soul. I would believe that it's largely to do with the contextual setting in which the birth happens, right? So if you're incarnated now, Baba is saying that in the East, men are being more spiritual, and in the West, women are being more spiritual, is what I'm getting from this. But then I think it's more a context in the larger big T of where your reincarnation takes place. The big time, T with time with a capital T, and not specific to individual soul's life cycle, but I may be wrong. Anybody else on this point on cycles of existence?
Karthik, Jai Baba.
Yes, Ashokji, go ahead.
It's also
Go ahead.
it's also a function of individual person's sanskara. So it'll be a different journey for different people. That will be another variable or a factor. Jai Baba.
And we need some clarity, but I beg to differ from Karthik's view. I feel it is regarding the individual soul itself. But we need clarity on that.
I think, Babaji, it may not be, or it may be a blend of the two, because if we read the cycles of existence, the last page, it says, in some ages, men are more active, energetic, and materialistic than women. In other ages, the reverse is true. So I'm not sure if the reference is to some era, past, future in general, or if it is individualized soul, or if it's a blend of the two, combination of soul's cycle of existence versus the age. So I'm not.
It must be a different entity itself. We need a lot more reference and then clarity on that.
Right. Yeah.
Sunil, it's a good point to ponder and maybe an area of research Because it may be a combination of various factors. Perhaps we can take, analogy of economics, macro factors and micro factors. So some is, for everybody, and some is relevant to an individual.
Also, the world today has changed a lot. So many people from the East are actually living in the West and then coming back, vice versa. People from the West are traveling to the East for work. So previously, this kind of a communication was not there. So does that make a difference?
Definitely, so much. It's a valid point. For example, many children are now from the East are gone for higher studies and careers to the West. Many people
And they
from
settle there.
And settle there, and many from the West come and settle in India, like Mehrabad, or for the religious, even for pursuing other careers in yoga and other music, especially for India, I speak. So there is a cross happening between East and the West. The East is not purely East, and West is not purely West. It's a fair point.
Okay, I have a point on the lighter note to Somaji and Namitaji. I don't know Namita is listening or not. Now in the Eastern Hemisphere, the average man has a greater spiritual inflation than average woman. What do you say about this?
You really want to do this? Huh?
It's
I haven't heard.
11:30. We can take a
Weekend on
chance.
this note, huh?
Sunil, आप हैं मुझे मार कर रहा है.
But Sunil, are you in the Eastern and Western?
I'm in a different room from Namita, so I can.
No. So Singapore comes where?
Oh, Singapore is East. Yeah, Singapore is East.
Okay.
So I have an interesting point on this. I mean, living in the south of the country, and many of you are from the south of the country. I'm told that when a man prays, he prays for the entire family. It is equivalent to praying for the entire family. But when a woman prays, she prays for herself. Right or wrong?
Not necessarily
I
true.
don't think so. This is a new revelation. I don't know.
Prays for her children.
People have told me here that the man is praying in the morning, is praying for his entire family. So that gives him more of a higher spiritual authority or whatever. I don't know how one should put it.
Not too sure about that. Yeah.
Yeah, not heard about that before.
Even if the woman prays for her own self, she works for the whole family. That's what I feel.
We pray for the whole family, of course.
There comes Rani Lakshmi Bai.
No, we call it Meera of the group.
Oh, okay. No, but today she might be in that avatar.
Might be, yes. Rani Lakshmi Bai, yes. So what's happening? Her face is moving.
You're muted, Namita. You want to unmute?
इस घर में या तो आप बोल सकते हैं या मैं.
मैंने अभी बोला, अब आप बोलिए ना कुछ.
Why don't you all show us your face? ऐसी भी क्या गलती हो गई हमसे?
नहीं, लाइट लगा दो.
बाकी के लोग कहाँ हैं? हेलो राजा जी.
Hello. Namaste.
नमस्ते.
I also take this opportunity, Namita, thanks for calling everybody. Hamara Jain Parv hai, where we ask for forgiveness. So on this call, knowingly or unknowingly, if I have hurt any one of you, there's an opportunity for me to ask for forgiveness from all. Today is our last day of fasting and then asking for forgiveness. So, Jai Baba.
Please forgive us also.
We also ask you or everyone else to forgive us.
Yeah.
In accounting, we say it's the close of the old account and probably a new account starts immediately.
Okay.
What's the name of this? It's called Micha Dukkadam, right?
Yeah, Michami Dukkadam is that saying, but actually Michami Dukkadam is not the right term exactly. We say
okay.
See, Michami Dukkadam says that I am forgiving myself for the what I have done wrong. Samayachana is what the process is, and it's called the Pajution Parv. Pajution is a period of 8 days of going inwards, fasting, going into your internal self, internally, going backwards. It's a retreat. In terms of Christianity, it's retreat. The priests do a retreat.
Nice.
So it's something similar to what has also been said in discourses about fasting. And
That's nice. Did you fast for 8 days?
no, I couldn't fast. I'm diabetic. I didn't fast, but I can ask for forgiveness. That's all.
Yeah, इतना तो कर ही सकते हैं.
नहीं, मैं fasting नहीं किया, सही बोलता हूँ.
हाँ.
And with work, it is challenging.
हाँ, वो तो है.
Oh, it's like 8 days of continuous fast or one meal a day or what is
There
it?
are people who do 8 days without water, without food.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That is a real strict regimentation. Some people do, it's all different variations. Some do only water for 8 days. Some do no water, no food. But if you do no water, no food, you have to be in a temple because that's really very tough.
I do every Monday.
Oh,
Only.
Yeah,
no,
you
no.
told us. Yes.
Yes, Raja. Raja, good to see you on the call.
Yeah, nice to see you all. Yeah.
So nice to see everybody.
Where
Yes.
is Kamakoti? Last half an hour or 45 minutes, he is silent.
Kamakoti is not there also. You can't see him. He's not, after nahi hua hai. He's invisible.
Kamakoti's strength is audio, not visual.
Even that is
I
silent.
know
Now,
who is there.
He prefers to be veiled. He prefers to be veiled.
Yeah, because he has
Can
to
I know
go.
can I know who is where? Sunil and Nomita are in Singapore, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And Soma is in
Chennai.
Chennai. And who Sridharan? Sridharan is in
Yes.
Chennai or Mumbai?
Bangalore.
Bangalore.
Myself and Karthik, Bangalore.
Karthik, Bangalore. Yeah. And Kamkoti? Kama?
Kamakoti
Depends on the
could be
time of day.
different places in the planet. Each
And
time.
Ashok is Pune, I know that.
I'm in Pune.
Nice.
Kama is still not coming out of mute, but I think he's right now in Bombay. And he has homes all over India. Bombay, Tirunelveli, Chennai, and Konur. So he's a rock star.
And sometimes Mehrabad as well.
Yes.
Did any of you visit Mehrabad since, or were we the last ones to go?
No, you're the last one.
Amit, yes,
I was
you were
there
the
in
last
March.
one.
And Nomita ji, we are waiting for your blue bus tour.
Yes, I'm going to buy a bus, and all of you, who is going to drive?
Drive.
We will leave it to Kamakoti because he will come.
He'll get over his driving. Yeah, that's true. I think Karthik is a good driver. And we have, what
I
about
will drive.
Sunil?
Sunil
He
drives
also
well.
drives.
Can
He drives
drive,
in
yeah.
India. Yeah.
He can drive anywhere, how long as long as you want him to drive. Yeah, he's good.
But no, this plan must come, Nomita ji, and because it's been almost many years, 1.5 years, and I also want to go to Mehrabad. So we plan to go to Mehrabad as well. But I just wanted to ask, when Mehrabad, is the darshan open or it's just closed still?
No, not yet open.
So when it opens up, we'll go. Probably nearing Diwali.
Darshan is open, right?
About the bus
No,
driving,
I don't think so.
I have the license to drive bus
They
and
had,
trucks.
they
Okay.
had
Oh.
opened in between, but
Oh.
now closed.
Oh, okay.
Karthik, for starters, you should keep an eye out for 18-seater bus, which we'll buy.
Okay.
Hi.
And you will have to have a different driving license for that. You can't drive with
NDA
your
bus.
car license.
I fail in all licenses, so one of you must get that one.
So right now it's only Raja. So
Yeah, so okay.
I will drive.
Yeah, during the day he drives, at night all of you. Nobody is going to check. That's so good. So with Baba's grace, we ask him that 2022 we should be able to take this trip. We will start from Bangalore and we'll go all the way to Kashmir.
But Nomita ji, jala because
Sounds great.
I maybe have to go to US early 2022 if it opens up to visit my grandson. So do it as early as possible.
आपको US जाना है?
हाँ, मेरे दोनों बेटे वहां पर हैं.
हमारे बच्चे भी उसी तरफ है, कोई बात नहीं, उनको ग्रैंडसन को देख लेना, पहले ये ट्रिप पे तो करो.
तो ट्रिप 21 में करिए. Why 22?
21 में क्या टाइम लगा है? कितना पैसे का बनता है बस? And we have to get Rajaji, we have to fly him. Are you in Copa uniform?
Then we'll put in the capital to buy. Okay.
ठीक है. Capital C. All right, we are going to do this, and we're going to paint that bus blue, you know.
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah.
uske apar, what is this? What is this group called? Meher Awakens, is it?
Meher Baba Awakens. And
MBA.
Nobody does branding, man. You got to brand every time.
Yeah,
Then
so
use
we'll do
MBA,
branding.
Meher Baba
So
Awakens.
उसमें
Yeah.
Meher Baba Awakens लिखा होगा एक तरफ.
Present continuous, right? Meher
And
Baba awakens. He's been doing it from the word go. From
Yeah.
the whim, he's just been awakening.
Yeah.
So present.
So in the bracket, I'll write Meher Baba Awakens me. So we'll do
Me is everybody to themselves. Everybody is a me. So you can write.
Namita ji and all of you, after 1.5 hours of rigorous reading, this is really welcome, you know, to
Yeah.
to detox and to not detox, I mean to
Detox.
relax. Relax.
मैं सुन रही थी, but I was multitasking. I want to show you Baba. I don't know how to show you, but okay,
Aapko
wait. I'll show you
screen
Baba. I was
background
give me 1 second, yeah. Just hold on for a second.
right on. Kama, where are you? Dr. Kama Koti.
It's gone silent.
Dr. Kama Koti, how to go?
He has dropped his gross, and then maybe he's with us in subtle.
Yes. We should all pray for the third wave. I believe
Not to come.
it started in Maharashtra.
Sorry to keep you waiting. I just wanted to show you my Baba. Can you see?
We can't see. We can't see. You have to remove the background.
There
You
are
can't
two
see, yeah.
Nomitas now.
Yeah.
Nomita
Yeah.
guest and Nomita there.
Can you see my Baba? Can you
राजा
see?
आपको दिख गया क्या?
Beautiful.
नहीं दिख गया क्या? मुझे तो नहीं दिख रहा.
Can you see my Baba?
No, you have to remove your backgrounds.
I can see.
Oh, is it?
I can't.
Hey, none of us. I can't see.
को नहीं दिखते हैं.
I can see.
आपको background निकालना पड़ेगा.
Hey,
Raja
Raja
is
showing
showing
a
Baba.
photograph.
एक और विंडो खुला है ना.
Hey, why don't you disconnect from your laptop, Namita?
बस यही दिखाना था. I just wanted to brag my Baba.
Yeah, we can't
हमें
see.
नहीं दिखा. हमें नहीं दिखा. So just disconnect on your computer,
आपको
please.
background,
Yeah,
जो
you're
है ना,
back
Okay, I'll disconnect. Okay, wait.
on the computer and then leave the one where you
Now you can.
Yes.
No, not yet.
Yes.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet for me as
Just
well.
share again,
सोमा
please.
जी अच्छे रास्ते पे चल रही है. बाकी तुम.
I can see clearly. I can see your Ganapati also.
Okay, that's good.
I can see.
Share again. We are not seeing it yet.
We are
What do
not
I do now?
spiritually.
Stop camera and then start camera
I
again.
think you're sharing from your phone, right?
Oh, she went out. She's gonna probably.
No.
Might be a Teams issue. You know. Yeah,
Now
now
yeah.
we can see it.
See you. Yes.
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 Yeah,
Yes.
man,
yes.
Baba. Yes.
Jai Baba.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Hey,
Really.
by the
Yeah,
way,
mute,
Nomita, we
Nomita.
need to work on that project which I asked for help. This week we'll finish it, huh? I need your team's help on the Baba word.
Meher Baba की.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Very nice.
Jai Baba.
Ganesha. Jai Baba,
Jai-
everybody.
Jai Baba.
Wake up
Jai Baba.
tomorrow.
Jai Baba.
Have a
Jai Baba.
good day.
Jai
Bye
Baba.
bye.
Good day.
Jai
Bye.
Baba. Bye.
Jai
Bye-bye.
Baba.
Jai Baba.